G'day all, Ben here, East West. This is going to be part 7 of our series of building a charting application using Python and tkinter. So let's just jump into it. Okay, I've just started here with the application window open, and the reason being is that I want to address an inefficiency that's happening here. So let's just grab a chart of Apple. When we hit fetch chart, what the code actually does is you can see down the bottom here that we've got 100% loaded. So what it means is it's done one download from the yfinance API, the Yahoo Finance API. So we've downloaded the data once. Now, as it sits, if we want to change, say, the chart style, we hit fetch chart again, what's happening is it's downloading the same data again. Okay, so we don't actually need to re-download this data because we already have it. But the way that things are set up is it's re-downloading data that's unnecessary. And the same thing would happen here if we go fetch chart and change it to candle. The download is the same series of data has been downloaded 3 times. Now that's really inefficient. What it's doing is it's smashing the yfinance API. Now I'm not 100% sure about this, but what I tend to find is after, I don't know how many downloads, I've read that it's up to thousands, but just for me, sometimes after a while, the download speed really slows down. So what I'm going to do, and I think it's better practice anyway, is to limit downloading from the Yahoo Finance API so that we only download when we need to. So these other things that I've just changed here, be it the style or the type, the other changes we could make is, say this start date is 2023 here. I mean, if we wanted to roll this forward to, say, the 5th of April and we just wanted to download that, well, we've already got that data downloaded. So what's happened is we've downloaded a fresh set of data that we just didn't need to. Okay, so there's some inefficiencies going on here, and I think we just need to address that because we don't want to be smashing the yfinance API any more than we need to. So I'll just exit the program here, and we'll just jump into the code and we'll make some of these changes that I think are a good practice to make. I think it's always a good idea to just look at the inefficiencies in your code, if there is any, and try to eliminate them. So I'm going to bring in, I've brought in a new heading here, and I'm going to bring in a new cell, and what I'm going to do here is declare some global variables. So the variables I'm going to bring in are the current symbol, the current start date, the current end date, and I'm going to bring in another one here called df full. Now the reason being is that we want to check these things, because if these things haven't been changed, and there's only certain sections like I showed you with the style or the background or something like that, then we don't need to re-download data. So we're going to bring in these variables, and now we're going to go down into our function and we're going to make a few changes here. So the first line of code I'm going to bring in here is I'm going to put in the keyword global, and I'm going to declare these variables that we set up here. So by putting the keyword global, what it means is that as these variables are changed, they're saved outside the scope of the function. So very simply, what it means is, we take these, we sort of move them out of this cell, and then when the function is rerun, it'll go outside of this cell to get these values. Okay, so we need to do it this way. So we don't want the values tied to the function, because the function will get rerun over and over again. So global just means that the the variables apply to the whole book. Okay, not just to this function that they're inside of. It'll make more sense as we go along. So what we really want to target here is this part. Okay, so at the moment, no matter what, we're just downloading a new set of data, and we don't necessarily need to. So what we're going to do here is we need to check if the data actually needs to be re-downloaded, or if we can just reuse the data that we already have. So to do that, we're going to bring in an if statement to check a few things. So the first thing we're going to say is if the data frame full, okay, which is this one, is none, which means we don't have any data. And if we don't have any data, obviously we need to download some. So that'll be the first thing to check. Next, we're going to say or if the symbol that we've requested through the fetch chart button is not equal to the current symbol. So that would mean that, if the data that had been downloaded was for Apple, and now all of a sudden we want Microsoft, obviously we need to re-download the data because it's a whole different set of data. So next we're going to say or if the start date is earlier than the start date we have downloaded. So that would mean if we want to look back further than the data that we've already got. So for instance, if we had a range of 2022 to 2024 and now all of a sudden we want it back to 2020, then obviously we would need to re-download that data because we need the data back to 2020, which we don't currently have. And lastly, we're going to do the same thing for the end date. You probably don't need this, but that would kind of apply if you had a range that did not end on today's date. So say for instance you wanted to look at what happened between 2020 and 2021, you looked at that and now you wanted to see all the way out to 2024. Well, obviously you don't have the data past 2021, you need to go in and re-download it. So they're the sort of scenarios where we would need to re-download more data. So because this is an if statement, we start here with an indent, and now the first thing we need to do is this. We're just going to compare if the start date that we already have is less than or equal to or greater than the start date that's being requested. Okay, so just remember that this is all about making a new request. So what we're saying is, okay, so a new request has been made. Okay, so the data that we've got, what's that start date compared to the start date that's been requested? So we're just going to do a new variable here. This one doesn't need to be global because it's going to be set each time by the function. So we're going to say new start date is the minimum of either the requested start date or the start date that we've got on file. But we need to put a little caveat in there. So what we're going to say is if, I'll just paste this in because it's quicker. So we'll say if current start date, meaning we do actually have a current start date, and we would only have a current start date if there's been data downloaded. And if there hasn't been any data downloaded, we will just use the start date. So we're just basically saying the new start date variable is going to be set to the minimum of either the requested start date or the start date we have on file. And this is only going to happen if we have a current start date. If we don't have a current start date, then the new start date is simply going to be the start date requested because there is no data. All right. And then we are going to do exactly the same thing for the end date, but we're just going to take the maximum. So we're going to take the latest end date that's available. Okay, all the logic is exactly the same. So we're still indented within this if statement. So if any of this stuff happens and we need to download a new set of data, then we want to check what dates we want to use to download, and then we want to come down here and we're going to use df full. Okay, so this is a change that we had because originally we were just using df, but the reason we're using df full is that we want to keep a copy of the full range of data that we have, because there might be a scenario where we've got 2000 to 2024 data for Apple, and then all of a sudden we only want to use let's say for instance you only want to see the last 5 years, so 2019 to 2024. You can request that to be charted, but we want to keep a copy of that full 2000, so that means that we could then go back and take any little slice of that data frame without compromising it itself. So you'll see this a little bit further on, but for right now all we're really doing is now saying df full. So that is going to be the data that gets downloaded. Now we're just going to update the current state. So basically what we're doing is we've downloaded this data, and what we're going to do is we're just going to update our global variables. So they're the ones up here. We're going to update those with basically the date range of the download that we've just completed, and also the current symbol. Okay, so like I said, if this was Apple 2020 to 2024, then we would have Apple, we'd have 1/1/2020, and this would be 1/1/24, or maybe today's date. Okay, so this was the old the old download that we were doing, and this one is the new download that we were doing. So that means that we don't actually need this anymore. Okay, so we are going to remove that for now. But now what we need to do is we need to step outside of this if loop. Okay, so we're done with that if loop, but we need to now slice the data frame to our required date range. Now this is why we've gone df full, okay, because we are now making a slice of DF full, which is the full data set that we've got, and we are reassigning that to DF, and that way we don't have to change anything else below in the code because we're still using DF. Now, if there's certainly instances where DF and DF full will be identical, but the way that we've got this set up handles all those little instances, unforeseen instances, where it'll save us from having to download more data. Because if we go back now and request a different start date and end date, the code will check and say, oh, well, I already have that start date and end date within the data that I've already got, so I'll just make a new copy of the data frame for the requested data, and then we can go ahead and replot that. So that's pretty much all we need to do. As I'm pretty sure we've made all the right changes that we need to make. Let's just run this so we can see what's happening here in action. So if we just run this, and I'll just shape my window up so you can see it. So I've purposely just left the bottom here blank again so you can see what's going on, right? So let's just fetch the chart. Okay, so you can see down here that it has done one download to get this data in. Okay, so now you remember what we were talking about. What I want to do now is I'm going to go, let's say, actually let's try it this way. Let's go, we only want to go to February. Okay, now if we fetch this chart, it doesn't need to re-download it. It's just sliced what we've got. Okay, if we want to go back to, if we want to go back to today's date, and it'd probably be worth putting that in, I'd suggest. If we want to do that, it can bring up the chart. It's not re-downloading. Okay, so that is the whole point. We're not re-downloading the data because that was very, very inefficient. If we bring up something else now, though, if we change symbol, okay, we do have to re-download because obviously we're changing symbol. So I hope that all made sense. That was just more some mechanics in the background, but it really does will help with the efficiency of the code, which is good practice to do. So now we are downloading less than required from the yfinance API, and hopefully that will reduce any instances of throttling. So I'll leave it here for this one. We'll do something a bit more exciting in the next one. We'll start putting some more stuff. We're just about to the point now we want to start adding studies into our toolbar, so we'll look at that in the next part. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.